So, in this video, we are having a very important conversation about the status of the Vancouver Canucks and the distinct possibility, as reported by Thomas Drance earlier last week, that the team will be interested in trading away seconds or third round picks. This is something that scares the heck out of people. And we already made a few videos talking about the Canucks and their supposed trade plan that does apparently open the door to a trade involving any of these picks. You know, there is a big disgust with this idea for a lot of Canucks fans, and when you look in the past on guys that the Canucks had traded draft picks for, young players that have upside, very few of them ended up working in the ways that the Canucks management thought they would. Lyndon Vey, Andre Pedan, Sven Baertschi. Okay, Baertschi was actually all right. And then you think about some of the names later on, the Lucas Reichelses, the Eric Bronstroms, guys that Vancouver tried to take flyers on that had supposed upside. But in this video, I wanted to clarify things a little bit. Because, sure, while it might be true that the Canucks have a certain kind of trade plan that does involve the potential of prospect picks getting sent away, we do have ourselves some clarification on behalf of Thomas Drance himself that I wanted to dive into in this video. So, take a look at this. It's April 9th edition of Halford and Brough, Thomas Drance Talks Canucks, plus the What We Learned. Hour 3 of the program, back on April 9th, had a really interesting discussion with Thomas Drance about the ins and outs of what this trading draft picks for young players idea actually would look like, and there is a clarification that I do think needs to be acknowledged. Now, here's the thing. I could just try to go out there and paraphrase what it was that Drancer said on this podcast episode, but honestly, I feel like doing that would be a bit of a disservice. And because I don't want to just play the audio outright, it's kind of their copyrighted material, what I did was I transcribed everything that Thomas Drance said that at least was relevant to this conversation and put it on a Google Doc. So without further ado, let's dive into what it was that Drance clarified in regards to the Canucks draft pick trade plan and what this could actually look like. He said, I think there's two things to be mindful of here. So first off, it's not going to be a first-round pick that the Canucks trade. Obviously. They are not going to be aggressive. In fact, Drance says the Canucks want to make their picks at this 2026 NHL Draft. So when I'm talking about potentially trading seconds or thirds, like he did in his article a few days ago, he's not talking about the picks in this draft, or at least not the first four. The first and second round picks in 2026. Maybe they use one of those picks to move up the board, but they want to get young guys out of this draft. They want to draft their own guys out of this draft class. So firstly, that calms the waters a little bit when you start talking about these picks over here. The Canucks own first overall, second, third overall pick, plus Minnesota's first that was acquired in the Quinn Hughes trade, added on to Vancouver's second, which will be 33rd overall, and then you also have the San Jose Sharks' second-round pick, which was acquired in the Kiefer Sherwood deal. Drance is hearing that, at the very least, Vancouver will likely use these four picks, and if they don't, they might have some sort of a trading up kind of scenario available to them. The fact is, he's talking about potential second or third-round picks in later drafts. It's really more about those extra 2027 or 2028 seconds. The fact that they have two in each of those years. Those are the picks to keep your eye on. Take a look at the Puckpedia page. Vancouver has San Jose's second in 2027, again acquired in the Kiefer Sherwood deal. And they also have the Dallas Stars' second-round pick in 2027, acquired for Tyler Myers. Vancouver has their own second in 2028, and then they have Columbus's 2028 second-round pick acquired in the Connor Garland deal. So Vancouver does have 6 second-round picks over the next 3 drafts, and that's essentially what Drance is talking about when it comes to which picks could be available for Vancouver in a trade-like capacity. Obviously, the Vancouver Canucks would rather trade a 4th or a 5th or whatever for one of these reclamation project types, but for the most part, the guys that are worth paying for, there's a difference between Justin Surdif and Lukas Reichel. And guess what? It's reflected in the price those teams paid when placing the bet initially. And I do think that that is a super meaningful part of the conversation that we haven't really talked about too much yet. Yes, it is true, Vancouver took a swing on Lukas Reichel. They did the exact same kind of thing that they had been doing over the past few years when you consider the kinds of trades they make where they send away draft picks for young guys. The Vancouver Canucks acquired Lukas Reichel in exchange for a 6th-round pick. And while it's true a 6th-round pick is not the end of the world, at the end of the day, Lukas Reichel was a player that, in Vancouver, never really displayed more value than that of a general 6th-round pick. I mean, he had 1 point in 14 games. Think about the Justin Surdif trade, on the other hand. Surdif, a former Vancouver Giant, a guy who is now in Washington, scoring 35 points in 77 games. He's been very versatile. He has been very good. You look at the acquisition cost that the Washington Capitals had to pay. Washington acquired Surdif in exchange for Washington 2nd in 2026, Washington 6th in 2027, and that's a lot more than what Vancouver had to pay for Lukas Reichel. It is reflected in the acquisition cost of these players that, hey, if you're trading away low picks for guys that are supposed to be futures, then don't be surprised if those future guys don't really turn out to be anything. Justin Surdif is awesome, and he also cost a lot more than Reichel. And so that is something the Canucks are going to take a long, hard look at. Drance says here he knows the ghosts of Lyndon Vey and Andre Padan and Emerson Edom haunt these shores. The problem is, it's fine to do it every now and then. It's honestly okay. Number one is that the only rule, it's not like age gap trades are bad, right? The only rule is, it has to work. The trade is evaluated on its own merits. The rule is that it has to work. And if you're doing it, you've got to get a good player back. Secondly, Drance says, if you're doing it in bulk, you are absolutely lowering, over a longer time horizon, the amount of potential upside that you are gaining. In a single deal, the amount of upside lost is minor. Doing it 10 times over 6 years, the way the Canucks did, the amount of upside loss becomes catastrophic. Draft picks are volatile. They're not guaranteed. But when they hit, they are hugely impactful in terms of reshaping your organization, and that volatility needs to be safeguarded. And this is a really interesting point that I didn't really see anybody else talking about elsewhere. It's just Thomas Drance bringing it up. Making an age gap trade, a 2nd-round pick for a young dude who's 21, 22, 23, it doesn't lose that much value by itself. Because if the 2nd-round pick ends up becoming a decent NHL player and the guy you get ends up becoming a decent NHL player, maybe the 2nd-round pick is better, who knows? It's not that big of a discrepancy. But when you do this so often, that's when the value goes down, because not every reclamation project ends up reclaiming themselves. A lot of these guys just fizzle out and don't become much. The last part is if you're doing it in bulk, and you're not regularly and effectively selling at the deadline and monetizing your own assets, that's how you create a cycle wherein you will be pulled down to the depths of the NHL, right? Like, that is where it becomes a completely unsustainable and self-defeating strategy. So essentially, Drance is acknowledging that there can be a place for age gap trades, especially with the Vancouver Canucks and where they're at right now. For what it's worth, it doesn't seem like any of these first 4 picks that they have in this year's draft are up for grabs. But next year's the seconds in the 2028 draft, they could be moved. Who really knows? And as long as they are moved for reasonably good pieces like Justin Sorta, for example, the Igor Chinakovs of the world, Vancouver might have a chance of actually getting some valuable pieces here, rather than just trading away 6th-round picks to get guys like Lucas Reichel, for example. Or Vinny Desharnais, or an Eric Bronstrom, or a Daniel Sprong, or what have you. This seems to be the Canucks trade plan, and I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Drancer's takeover here? This is going to be linked in the description if you want to listen to the audio podcast yourself. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sign on, and bye.